across the fence, we're celebrating the maple season with Vermont's Maple Ambassadors. Good afternoon and thanks for joining us. I'm Judy Simpson. Every year, 2 young Vermonters are chosen to serve as the state's Maple Ambassadors. The winners, 1 male and 1 female, are announced at the annual Vermont Maple Festival in St. Albans in April. The ambassadors must be Vermont students between the ages of 16 and 21. They each receive a $2,000 scholarship. During the year, the ambassadors take part in fairs, festivals, and field days and educate the public with their maple knowledge. Joining me this afternoon are the current Maple Ambassadors, Will Dunkley from Westford and Ashlyn Royce from Danville. Thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you for having us.
Now, how did you each become Maple Ambassadors? Will, maybe you can start.
So every year the Maple Ambassador is chosen at the St. Albans Maple Festival in April. You first apply early on with an application, and then you come in with an interview and have an interview, and people test you on your maple knowledge, and they ask you a little bit about the future of Vermont maple, and whoever they think is the best candidate is chosen that way.
What were some of the things that you mentioned?
Well, talking about the future of maple, I talked about increased technological uses in the industry, so bigger operations, more automation, just like you see in a lot of different agricultural industries. So that's one thing I talked about.
And how about for you, Ashlyn?
Well, when I talked in my interview, I like to focus on the balance between finding the technological advancements and balancing the tradition of it, because I know with our family we like to have a lot of tradition in it. So we still have buckets, we still have like a small operation, very hands-on. Like we don't have an RO, so I like to balance that, and that was one of the biggest important things for me.
Now you mentioned an RO. For people who don't know what an RO is, can you explain that?
It's reverse osmosis, so it's basically trying to take the sugar that's in maple syrup out of the water that is in the sap. So it's a very fine filter, and a molecule of sugar is a lot larger than one of water, and so it filters out through that.
Well, now this year the Maple Festival is celebrating its 50th anniversary. It will be held on April 22nd, 23rd, and 24th. Why is the festival significant, do you think, and what does it mean to you personally, Ashlyn?
The Maple Fest is really important to all of Vermont and all of the surrounding states even, because it's just an opportunity for all the sugar makers in anywhere to come around and just gather and talk and see like who had what kind of year and what kind of advancements they made or what difficulties they had, and it's just a way to like just talk about maple with everyone else.
Do you have a favorite part of the festival?
I definitely love the craft fair. That's probably one of my favorites. There's vendors from all over the place selling all sorts of different things. There's maple products, there's stone products, there's jewelry, there's all this other stuff, and it's neat to see all the different things that people have.
And there are a lot of people that attend.
There are very, very many people that attend. St. Albans is basically closed for the whole weekend.
Now, to qualify for the Maple Ambassadorship, you have to have knowledge and some experience in maple sugaring. Will, tell us about your maple background.
Okay, so growing up, my father and I, or my family and I, didn't do any sugaring, but friends of ours had operations, and one friend, Chris McBride, who was actually a big part in helping me get into the Maple Ambassador role, he's got a sugaring operation in Westford, and I grew up hanging out over there, learning about the operation and helping out. And then last season, so the 2015 season, my father and I took over an operation from an older guy who was getting out of it. He was getting on in years and needed to retire. So we took that operation over, and then we bought a little bit of land and expanded, and so this year we have about 12,000 taps in 2 sugar bushes, and we boil maple syrup in Westford.
That's amazing. And so, Ashlyn, you talked a little bit about a smaller, sort of more traditional operation. Tell me about what your family does.
So our family has about 400 taps in our own land. We have about 100 acres in North Danville, and we're up on a mountain, so it's colder weather. And so our season tends to run about 2 weeks behind everyone else in the area. And we run line, but we don't have reverse osmosis. We boil everything straight from sap. And I grew up sugaring. My uncles have an operation in southern New Hampshire, and they have about 5,000 or 6,000 taps. Also, they're more into the technology, and it's kind of just been a part of my life for forever.
And so over the past year, you've each participated in a number of maple-related events. Tell us about some of the things that you've done and what you've learned. Will, why don't you start off?
Okay, so the first event was the St. Albans Maple Festival, and that's always exciting and big, and you get to see a lot of people and eat a lot of the food there. And then following that, we did go to Maple Rama, and then we went to, I think the Champlain Valley Fair was next, and then Eastern States. And Ashlyn actually went to some of the smaller fairs. What were some of those?
So about 2 weeks after we were crowned, Glenn Goodrich from Cabot had an open house that I attended, and he did seminars where I spoke about my new ambassadorship and like my history in maple. I also attended Caledonia County Fair and the Danville Fair. I just like to go to some of the smaller ones that maybe not as many people are into and try to get the interest in maple and try to like improve, like trying to boost the maple economy.
And so, Will, you mentioned Maple Rama. What was that?
So that was, it's a festival like held every year, and it switches counties every year, so it goes through each of Vermont's counties, and this year it was in Caledonia County. And what you do is just go visit sugar houses and some other small agricultural areas. So we went to one big place we went to was Sweet Tree in Island Pond. It's the new big maple sugaring production.
Huge. I haven't seen it.
Yeah, so they are not fully where they're going to be, but they have expanded quite a bit. I think they are boiling off of like 200,000 taps or so this year. That's just a rough estimate. But so we got to see their production facility, which is an old Ethan Allen furniture factory that's converted into a sugar house, but it's more of like a sugar factory. And then we visited where they collect sap at a location in Warren's Gore, and so we saw that, and that's just crazy. It's just huge, and so much technology going to that, and it's pretty amazing. And we also visited other sugar makers in Caledonia County and other counties. We just checked out what they're doing and saw some pretty cool things. There was one guy in Norton who had a big operation. He actually had a living unit in his sugar house, so it was really nice that, you know, the evaporator and everything and the tanks, and then upstairs he had a bed and kitchen and everything. It was pretty cool.
That's great.
Yeah.
So what would you say, Ashlyn, is your favorite part of maple sugaring?
My favorite part is probably the refining after the maple has already been made. So I like making the creams and doing the sugars and making all the candies, because that's just like something that I always liked doing when I was a kid, and I always liked eating this stuff. So that's one of my favorites. I also like going out in the woods and just running lines and just tapping and stuff like that, because it's just, you get into it and you feel like you're a part of history when you are.
And how about for you, Will?
For me, it's being in the woods is my favorite part. Our sugar bush in Jericho has a really nice view of the Adirondacks and the lake, and so I like being up on the ridge and doing whatever work it is I'm doing that day, whether it's tapping or checking the lines for leaks. I really enjoy that, being in the woods. And another thing I really enjoy is visiting other sugar makers, because at that time you can just go watch them work. You're taking a little bit of time off, relaxing and enjoying watching them and seeing various technologies they're using and meeting people and talking, and I like that as well.
It sounds like there's almost always something new to learn.
Yeah, there definitely is.
They're definitely, yeah. Like for me, it's only our second year sugaring, so I have a lot to learn, but I kind of, you know, pick everybody's ear all the time, asking them questions, learning as much as I can. Ashley and I kind of do that both when we're together at events. We just kind of, whatever we're interested in, we talk to people who are older sugar makers and learn as much as we can.
So where do you see the future of the maple industry, do you think?
I don't know. I think it's going to be very important, because like I know maple has recently, we've been trying to stress the health of it, because it's a natural sweetener. It's high in antioxidants. It's like a lot better for you than the highly refined and processed sugars. And so like using that would be like, I feel like that's going to be a big boost for it, and to try to keep it in the mindset of people. And how about for you, Will?
Yeah, I think increased automation is kind of where it's headed. And I also think that sugaring operations like Sweet Tree are going to become more common, where companies are buying up land and putting in taps and boiling, rather than it being, you know, a farmer like it used to be. Maybe a dairy farmer is going to go up in his woods and tap his 1,000 taps. Now it's kind of like a company with a lot of money might buy 5,000 acres and set up 100, 200,000. Yeah, and so I think that's kind of where it's headed. But I also think the market is going to continue to demand syrup, and I think more people are going to use syrup. As Ashlyn was saying, it's much more healthy than a lot of other sweeteners. and the way it's made is really interesting and great and beautiful in my opinion. So I think the market's going to grow, but also automation and increased production is going to occur as well.
Right. Are there anything that concerns you about some of the things that maybe you see coming up?
I can see global climate change being a factor in it because in recent years, the sugaring seasons have been odd. They haven't been like what they used to be in the past.
Yeah.
The seasons are shortened, and some days you get 10,000 gallons of sap, and some days you only get one.
Yeah, I'm concerned about climate change as well. I think even we're seeing that this season a little bit.
Definitely.
And in recent seasons, it definitely is a little bit of a warmer climate, and also weird things are happening with the weather. You know, like Ashlyn was saying, some days get really warm.
Very strange winter.
Right.
Yeah, so
Definitely.
I mean, as of now, it seems like the production's still okay, but I've heard that some areas have actually struggled. I think in Canada, I'm pretty sure Nova Scotia, this is just kind of word of mouth, but their season may have actually declined in the last 40 years due to climate change. And so that's one concern. Another concern is as these companies buy up land, it'll maybe be harder for someone like Ashlyn and I to get into it someday. The land will be too expensive, or it will be all owned by somebody else, and there'll be no more sugaring for a young person who wants to get involved.
Well, early in the program, you mentioned the upcoming Maple Festival, which starts April 22nd, and that's when 2 new Maple ambassadors are going to be chosen. Do you have any tips for someone who might be interested in becoming an ambassador?
Yeah, I would recommend just getting as involved as you can when you're at the events. Talk to people, walk around, shake people's hand, and introduce yourself. And if you can, just grab someone's ear and talk up maple syrup. I mean, if they have any questions, answer them. I did that at the Champlain Valley Fair as I was working in the sugar house there. You know,
what were some of the questions that you got?
Well, a lot of people ask, because I was wearing the sash, you know, that says Maple Ambassador. They asked, you know, how do you become Maple Ambassador? What do you do? And then, you know, like, how much sap does it take to make a gallon of syrup? Or other questions like that, where a lot of people might not know, but Ashlyn and I have that knowledge. So the Maple Ambassador has a lot of knowledge, and I recommend that they try to give that information as much of it as they can to people who are curious.
What do you think you're going to remember most, Ashlyn, about your ambassadorship?
The people that I met, honestly. That's the biggest thing for me, is just getting to know people and talking to people and just learning from them, because a lot of them, they've been involved for 30, 40 years, and they know a lot more than any of us do. Yeah. So I think learning from them is the biggest thing that I'm going to take away from this.
And so you both went to the Big E, is that correct?
We did.
And what was that like?
That was incredible.
Yeah.
Have you been there before?
I had when I was very young.
I had never been, and it was crazy. There's a lot of people down there, a lot of traffic. There was like millions of people. Well, I think more than 1 million people go through there. Yeah. And the Vermont building sells a lot of maple products. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
And so did you have questions from folks from downstate? Was that different from the questions that you get up here?
Yeah, it was actually so packed in the building that day. I mean, you could hardly move. It was like the booths were, you know, in between the booths were just people jammed shoulder to shoulder.
Wow.
So I actually was behind the counter a lot, helping out with making maple confections and stuff like that. But I did get a few questions, but like I said, it was so crowded that like people just had to move through, or else they were going to get pushed over. It was like that. So
now you're both in school. How are things going? Where do you go to school? What are you studying?
I go to UVM. I'm a freshman. I'm studying forestry right now, and balancing sugaring with school has been pretty hard.
I bet.
Yeah, I'm only taking 4 classes right now, but I spend quite a bit of time at home, quite a bit of time in the woods, and so keeping up with school, keeping up on sleep's been kind of hard.
And how about for you, Ashlyn?
I'm a freshman at Lyndon State College. I'm studying environmental science. I'm actually doubling in environmental and sustainability studies with a minor in biology. And so, like you said, balancing between, because I also play softball at college, so balancing all of my schedules is one of the biggest things.
Yeah.
That's crazy. All right, well, if you know someone who's interested in being the 2016 Maple Ambassador, you'll want to pass along the information for the 50th Vermont Maple Festival, which will be held April 22nd through the 24th in St. Albans. The festival schedule, as well as information and application materials for the Maple Ambassadors, is on the website vtmaplefestival.org. You can also call for more information. That number is 802-524-5800. I want to thank you both for coming in today.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
And good luck in the future.
Thanks.
Thank you.
That's our program for today. I'm Judy Simpson. We'll see you again next time on Across the Fence.